Thanks to our friend who supported the channel financially in the previous video. And before we start, don't forget to like, subscribe, and support the channel financially. Sariel's lips curled with contempt as he slowly raised his curved sword and said, "I wasn't told the infamous Black Scythe was a silent dog," he muttered to himself, voice dripping with arrogance, as if he hardly considered Ryu worth the breath it took to speak. He continued, "Even if you can't speak, you're not deaf. I'll say it again. Resistance is—" But before he could finish, a calm yet commanding voice sliced through the tension like thunder through still clouds. "Jeffrey." Sariel blinked. The human had spoken. Ryu didn't even glance at the angel. His eyes, calm yet burning, stayed fixed ahead as he addressed the man behind him, saying, "Take the party members and retreat. Get as far back as you can. This place is about to become a battlefield." His tone was quiet, but firm. Jeffrey nodded instantly, already moving, saying, "Understood, Black Scythe." With the party beginning their withdrawal, Ryu turned back toward the angel, and what he saw on Sariel's face was priceless. The angel's expression twisted into something far from heavenly. His perfect features contorted in disbelief and then fury. His aura began to tremble, as if his divine composure had been shattered. Sariel spat, eyes narrowing, saying, "So, you do have a tongue after all." Ryu smirked coolly and said, "And I have a finger to insult you with." He raised his hand without hesitation and extended his middle finger toward the angel, a deliberate and unmistakable gesture. Sariel's eye twitched. The muscles in his jaw clenched, and for a moment, all the heavens seemed to shudder with his restrained fury. He shouted, "You've become arrogant just because you've gained a bit of power. For a mere human." Then suddenly, Sariel's eyes widened. His voice faltered. His gaze had fallen to the pendant hanging from Ryu's neck. He said, his tone shifting into one of disbelief and alarm, "That necklace, where did you get it?" Ryu tilted his head lazily and asked, "Why? Interested?" he asked. His voice thundered like a bell tolling for doom. "Do you even know what that is?" Ryu only chuckled and said, "You're quite talkative for someone who looked so stern a moment ago." And then, darkness. Like ink spreading through clear water, shadows bloomed from Ryu's form. His body was suddenly cloaked in a writhing mass of black energy. The air trembled. Ryu used his skill. Reaper transformation activated. Black tendrils of death coiled around his limbs as his eyes glowed red like twin embers in the abyss. Then, Demon's Blessing is activated. An unseen voice echoed in the void. Mechanical, ethereal. Current total stats: 109,967. Angel kill rewards calculated. Gold reward up to 1,000 equals 109,967,000. Stat point gain up to 10% equals 10,996. Demon reputation increase, slight, buff duration, until end of round. Ryu scanned the notifications with a glint in his eye. He opened his status window and couldn't help but smirk. Strength, 25,274. Intelligence, 27,325. Agility, 27,532. Luck, 29,836. And those numbers didn't even include the buffs cast by Minjuri or the power zones he had placed strategically on the battlefield. In addition, he held the Rune of Balance, the Rune of Slaughter, the title of First Angel Slayer, and his Reaper transformation. He murmured to himself, flexing his fingers. Plus, I got a hefty stat reward from defeating Remiel. Indeed, Ryu was far stronger now than when he'd taken down the former Archangel, but strength alone wouldn't guarantee victory, not against Sariel. He narrowed his eyes and said to himself, "I can't underestimate him, even if he's only ranked 6th. He'd need to test Sariel, probe his abilities, assess his speed and precision." And once he was sure, Rao added, "I'll kill him without mercy." The air itself trembled. Killing intent from both sides filled the battlefield, like two storms about to collide. Across from him, Sariel stared with growing fury. That necklace, that blasphemous demonic symbol, burned in his vision like a cursed brand. He sneered, saying, "I had planned to be merciful," but now his hands trembled, not with fear, but rage. His divine nature rebelled at the sight of that pendant, a symbol of disgrace, a reminder of the ancient war between angels and demons, a war he had bled in. He asked, "You dare wear that proudly?" And he shouted, "Arrogant human, I'll make you suffer until you beg for death." His plan to take Ryu alive shifted. He could bring him back in pieces if he had to. Sariel narrowed his eyes and said, "But that form." The Black Scythe now resembled something more than a man. Cloaked in shadows, gripping a scythe that dripped with spiritual darkness, he looked like the god of death himself. But Sariel scoffed, saying, "It doesn't matter how well he mimics a god. A bug is still a bug." He could feel it. The darkness Ryu wielded, though powerful, could not rival his own divine essence, not even close. Sariel, the archangel of death, raised his chin with serene arrogance and sneered, saying, "Come at me, human. I'll generously give you the first move." His voice, laced with contempt, echoed like a divine decree. But Ryu gave no reply, no words, no emotion, just movement, a blur, sudden and explosive, as Ryu lunged forward, his weapon slicing the air in a deadly horizontal sweep aimed straight for Sariel's waist. Surprised, only for a heartbeat, Sariel's expression barely shifted, and he said to himself, "A waist-level strike? Predictable." That hooked weapon had a flaw. Dodging backward was suicide. Most would jump or block, but Sariel was not most. His eyes narrowed and he said, "I'll dodge forward." With perfect timing, he stepped in, narrowly evading the blade, closing the distance in one elegant motion. The tip of his curved sword gleamed as he drew it back, poised for a fatal thrust into the enemy's chest. But then, he said, "No, that's too easy, too merciful." His blade snapped upward, arcing like lightning, and carved through the Black Scythe's arm. A scream tore through the cavern. Minjuri cried in horror. "Black Scythe!" Sariel glanced toward the spectators, trembling humans who watched like it was a gladiator match. His lip curled in disdain, saying, "Pathetic, to be so arrogant with such pitiful skill." But then his smirk faded. Something was wrong, very wrong. A chill ran down his spine, ancient and primal. Danger. He spun, instincts roaring, but too late. 5 of his 6 wings were severed in an instant. Golden blood sprayed into the air. Sariel staggered, gritting his teeth as pain lanced through him. Behind him stood the Black Scythe, intact, whole, smiling. Ryu said, "Good instincts." "I aimed for all 6. Sariel's mind reeled. He looked back. The version of the Black Scythe whose arm he'd severed was gone, vanished. He whispered, saying, "A clone." The realization hit like thunder, and before he could react, their blades collided again. Sariel grunted, parrying desperately. He asked himself, "Why am I being pushed back?" His strikes were sharper than mortals could see. He was the archangel of death, drawing on the very power of darkness itself, a force older than time. Yet this man, this human, was overwhelming him. Each clash sent shockwaves through his arms. He said to himself, "It's not possible. Darkness cannot lose to darkness of a lesser rank. No human should be able to—" Another blow, another clash. His footing slipped. He added, "He's getting faster, stronger." Cold sweat dripped down his brow. His arms ached. His remaining wing trembled from strain, and then pain. He gasped. All his wings gone, sliced cleanly. He hadn't even felt it happen. He inquired, "When?" Panic bloomed in his chest, and he said, "This is dangerous, truly dangerous." With his pride bleeding alongside his golden blood, Sariel made his choice. He gripped his sword, and it began to tremble, a low, haunting wail echoing through the air. It wasn't metal. It was the soul itself, screaming. He was unleashing the forbidden technique, cry of the soul. The cavern trembled. The wail spread like a curse. It clawed into the minds of every living thing around. The spectators dropped to their knees, faces twisted in terror, eyes wide with horror. Their limbs refused to move. It was over. Sariel smirked and said, "No creature can resist this. No one, not even him." He stepped forward slowly, confidence returning with each stride, and said, "The game ends here. I'll take just your arms." He approached his seemingly paralyzed opponent with cruel grace, convinced that victory was sealed. But then the Black Scythe looked up, unshaken, unaffected. eyes glowing with a power far beyond mortal or divine. Ryu smirked and said, "Game? You thought I was playing?" Sariel froze mid-step. His heart skipped. The Black Scythe smiled, not with glee, but revelation. Ryu added, "I was gauging your strength." Sariel's mind screamed and asked, "Why didn't it work?" There was no time to think, only time to run. But his wings, gone. He leapt, trying to flee, but fell, powerless. A flash erupted. The scythe glowed silver with a brilliance unlike any earthly or heavenly light. Moonlight flash, a single strike, and the cavern collapsed. Boom! Rocks fell. Dust swallowed the battlefield. And where Sariel once stood, nothing but rubble and ruin.